This is Raj Jana from the Stay Grounded podcast. He is the founder of JavaPresse Coffee Company. He's a public speaker. He's been featured on Inc., Forbes, Entrepreneur, and much more. So, Raj, first off, thank you again for coming on this podcast today. The first question I ask every single one of my guests, and I'm really interested to hear what you have to say, is what makes your heart sing? Like truly, what makes you happy? What makes your heart sing out loud?
I felt that question. What makes my heart sing? Doing things I love with people I love. I've been on a pretty interesting creative journey as of recent. I'm an entrepreneur background, or I used to be an engineer, then turned an entrepreneur. And I feel like every step of the way, I've been discovering a new identity about myself, and that identity has created a new way of living and creating and interacting with people. And so it's been a wonderful journey of, bringing things to life that didn't exist, whether it's a business or a podcast or a course or something beautiful, but then being able to share that with people I love, whether it's the people I want to impact or my family or my friends. And I think what makes my heart sing right now, if I'm just being present in this moment, is just being able to share my gifts, my creations, and the things that light me up with people that I want to help, with my team, with my family, and kind of really staying grounded and rooted in who I am and who I aspire to be. And I think living in that way makes my heart sing very, very, very loud.
That's awesome. That's beautiful. Honestly, that was I love hearing that, especially coming from somebody. I'm not an old. I'm 35 years old, but you're definitely younger than I am, right?
I'm 28.
28, yeah. So right in that millennial, I'm like on the cusp. You're right in there. So to hear that somebody doing what like really they're passionate about instead of chasing money and chasing like trying to become famous or whatever, you could totally tell you mean exactly what you're saying in that statement, and I love that. So I want my audience to know a little bit more about Raj before we get into some more mindfulness stuff and a couple other questions I have for you. What is like the 5-minute story of Raj from where he was, where he started, a little bit about him, and then how you got to like to just impacting lives with your podcast, everything else, to where you are today?
Sure. So I started off, used to be a petroleum engineer, graduated from college, got a really high paying job right out of school, realized I didn't want to be that, or I didn't want to be in a cubicle job. And so I started buying courses on entrepreneurship, reading books, teaching myself how to be an entrepreneur. Started my first company, JavaPresse, in that journey. And I started launching products online and creating products and really loving it and kind of enjoying it. And then 3 months after I launched our first products and the company, I had a mentor who worked 37 years at the same company die of a heart attack 3 months before retirement. And I think that experience really lit a fire under me to not create that life for myself. I think that's really where the initial fire came. I was just so terrified of that being my reality and the reality for everyone I loved in my life. And so I wanted to be a shining example that you can have your cake and eat it too. You can escape a life that you were born in. You can do something more if you wanted. And entrepreneurship became my vehicle. So then less than a year later, we broke our first million at the coffee company.
Awesome.
And I was still working full time, but I was working way too hard, really long hours. And I didn't really know why I was working so hard until a really important mentor of mine told me to slow down and sort of reflect and kind of really start building self-awareness. And that was really the first time I'd ever kind of slowed down and look at my life and reflect and see, all the things I was doing, why I was working so hard, what was important to me, who did I want to be, who did I want to help, really asking myself better questions. And in that journey, I realized how big of an impact my mentor had on my life, and how that message was so important for me to share, and how I didn't want anyone in my life to experience that pain. Usually, you find your mess becomes your message. That's the best way it's been explained to me. Like when your pain, the suffering, the things that you experience end up becoming a gateway to helping other people and not have to do that. And so anyway, so that's long story short. that's when, stay grounded. You actually started off as a tagline at my coffee company, stay grounded, the moments you love, like get it, like, pun intended.
Yeah,
Um,
grounded and ground
yeah,
coffee.
yeah,
Yeah, totally. It's
yeah, yeah,
great.
yeah. So it was a great like pun, and that turned into a lifestyle message. And then later in 2017, I launched the podcast, and then that took a life of its own. And then, started speaking more, started, just creating more business. But at the true core, I'm still an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I still start businesses. I still build teams. I'm still
Nice.
using business as a vehicle to spread empowering messages. And to me, yeah, it's been an interesting journey, but I'm here now.
I love it. It's just, it's the process of it. And I've listening to what you said. You mentioned twice that you realized something, and I wanted to come back to that because I think there's so many moments in our lives where there's an opportunity for us to stop, think, and reflect,
Yeah.
and decide and make a decision what we want to do about it. And you were talking about your mentor passing, which first off, I know it was a while ago, but I'm sorry that happened. However, there sounds like something that was good that really came out of that from you. You noticed that you didn't want to go down that path of working so hard and then retiring, and then who knows if you're going to even make it to retirement, right? Whereas some of us might have just pushed that to the side, been sad, upset, and then moved on with our lives. You actually had like a mindfulness moment, right? And decided to make a change in your life and decided to go on a different path. So I really wanted to point that out. I love that. And then you said it again later on. So how do you, does this come natural to you, or are there techniques that you've developed to, to be like aware? And when I first asked you the question about what makes your heart sing, you closed your eyes, you took a deep breath. What are you doing to get yourself in those moments like that?
Beautiful question. I would say that in the beginning, the loud, I feel like and I'm a very spiritual individual, and I more than religious, I'm extremely spiritual, and I believe that there's a higher power, whether you believe in God, whether you believe the universe, whether you believe in whatever ether that's floating around. I
Totally.
believe that there's something out there that's just a hell of a lot smarter than we are, right? That, I mean, the universe came before us and it'll be there after us. It was creating whether we were in it or not. So the idea that we know everything that's right for us in every single moment is ludicrous. Like, it can't be, right? The world is much bigger. So if you prescribe to that belief, one thing that came very early on for me was the fact that the more I tried to put my stake in the ground, the more I tried to, create my moments, the more I had that mindset, the louder the signs got, where,
Hmm.
there might have been a clue or something, a moment for me to reflect on that I would have just passed by and said, oh, nope, not for me today, or not for me today. Nope, I'm stuck on this. But to me, my mentor passing was a loud enough bang on, like a drum bang from the universe or whatever, just telling me, look, pay attention. Um, I think we all have moments like that. Because I mean, I worked full time. There were many people that knew Jerry. I was the one that took that as a message to create what I wanted to create. So I think that having a habit of sort of really slowing down and pausing and listening to yourself is really important. Intuition is really what you're building. That taking a deep breath and kind of knowing what to say, taking a deep breath, or even taking a moment to just check in with how you feel about what just happened.
Mm-hmm.
I think our bodies are massive mounds. Like, there's an encyclopedia inside of us that we don't even access. If you really think about our brains, 3% of our brains is our conscious processing power. The rest
Okay.
is all subconscious, right? So our subconscious bodies have so much information that's constantly being gathered and processed. When we take a moment to just slow down and check in with our feelings, how do we feel about what just happened, right? And that's a practice you can do every single day, whether it's when you start, like, how do I feel about something in my life? Usually that comes in the form of gratitude for me. So every single morning I'll start with just writing down a massive list of things I'm grateful for, or one thing I'm really grateful for and why. And I'll really extrapolate on that, because that forces me to, again, slow down and really feel what I'm grateful for. And then, as something happens throughout the day, I'm always focusing on kind of checking in with how I feel. And I think that's something that came over time after infusing a practice of reflection into my life. And reflection was definitely routine. I mean, I would do it in the morning and in the evenings. I would do it weekly, really see kind of, did I work on the right things? Where did I fall off? What made me fall off? And starting to really pay attention to those things in my life. And I think when you start to get into the moment, so there's two prongs. You pay attention. That's one point.
Yep.
Right. And you can build in a habit of paying attention, but not just to the things happening around you, what's happening inside of you. If someone triggers you, or if someone cuts you off on the road and you get angry, that's usually a reflection of something that's happening inside of you than it is of the other person. Right. Because
Correct.
that same event happened to tens of people and something happened to you. So when you take that as a moment and as an opportunity to just check in, you start to build the muscle of checking in. And then the second one is acting on whatever you feel, right? Most of us are on autopilot in many ways. You know, I don't know how many times individuals even go to restaurants now just based on intuition, right? Like they're looking up reviews, they're reading the things, what's the best thing to order on the menu? I mean, when's the last time, I mean, I'll ask you, man, like when's the last time you went to a restaurant?
Raj, I wanted to interrupt you there because just yesterday I was trying to figure out where to go with my videographer for lunch, and it took me like 20 minutes to figure it out based on reviews and pictures and everything else. And I was like, "What am I?" I literally did that. I go, "What am I doing?" So I texted him and I go, "You know what? Honest to God, I can pull up the text right now."
That's awesome.
I texted him and I said, "You know what? I've been looking for something for 20 minutes now. I'm totally like beyond myself why I've been spending this time doing this. So now we're just going to have our meeting on the phone."
It's amazing, right? Like, I mean, we spend so much time looking for someone else to give us the answers when there's a voice inside of us that tells us exactly what we wanted in the first place,
100%
right? It was
right.
usually made in a second too. It's like, what do I want to eat today? Oh, I want a burger. Like it's usually made in a second, and then the mind comes into play and it starts justifying things and rationalizing things. And I got to find the best thing. And right. So to me, it's two-pronged. One, building a healthy habit of reflection, but then also just indulging that voice and that gut and just taking action. It can be as small as just saying, I'm going to go to this today, or I feel like writing this down right now, or I feel like just sitting, right? It's just indulging that inner voice. And I think over time, when you do that loud, if you do that long enough, the voice doesn't get much louder, but your ears get a lot better at hearing it. And I think that's been my process and my experience, at least.
Yeah. I mean, based on your experience, do you know why our brains, we have that intuition, right? That gut feeling, and then our brains just start making up reasons and deciding things, why not, or what could be in the way, or why we shouldn't do something. Do you know why that happens to us?
Oh, dude, safety. You know, our subconscious minds are not there to keep us to, our brains don't want us to thrive. They want us to survive. And survival is based on patterns that have been experienced in the past, right? So
Right.
our natural tendency with all this information is to make the best decision based on all of the information at our disposal, so we don't make a wrong decision that then leads us to dying. Like it really is that primitive. Our brains are so simple. Everything, even beliefs, right? Like beliefs on anything from worthiness to comparison to I'm not gonna, all these things are like, actually, let me give you an example. So
Yeah.
the best example that was ever shown me was actually by a woman on my podcast named Adamaris Mendoza. She had this brilliant insight on our episode together where she talked about, you know, a woman who's been in an abusive relationship, right?
Okay.
This woman who is constantly, like, she keeps dating people that are hurting her. She keeps repeating the same pattern over and over and over again, and she didn't know why. And when you get down to the core of it, the reason why she continues creating the same patterns over and over and over again is because dating someone crappy and coming out on the other side, that's something she's survived before. It's not new, right? Like she's
Sure.
gone through the crappy relationship. She knows how to be in a crappy relationship. To her, being in a really good, beautiful, heart-filled relationship is actually 10 times more risky to your subconscious mind, right? Than it
Yeah.
is to just keep repeating the same thing that's always worked, because you didn't die yet. You're still alive. And so we have these subconscious patterns that just keep creating things, right? And our
Yeah.
minds are built to justify those patterns in our heads.
Yeah.
So until you start to align yourself, right, with what you consciously want, until you start to really align your subconscious beliefs with what you consciously want, it's always going to be really hard to just trust your gut and instincts, because you're always going to have
Ah,
an element of doubt that says this can't be right.
that's
Right.
great.
Because so let's say you want to change your life. Like, I want to get in really great shape. Well, if there's a reason why you haven't gotten shape in the first place and you're
Yeah.
not exploring that, your mind's always going to fall into the excuses. Oh, it's too hot outside. Oh, I'll do it later. Oh, like, it's a lot easier to fall into those patterns because you're not really dealing with the root cause
Right.
and the root emotions of what's keeping you where you are in the first place.
And that's held in your subconscious. So it's just complete. It kind of, when you're saying that, it reminds me of a lot of people that I've talked to, or even myself back in the day. Whereas if people that like grow up middle class or poor, they had that subconscious that they don't deserve to be a millionaire, right? They don't deserve to have lots of money in their account, right? So it's really hard for them to break free of that and to do that, no matter what they're going after, whether it's a stay grounded or whatever it is, until they break free of that subconscious belief that they're always not they're not allowed, or they're not able to have that, then they're never going to get it, right? Or it's
Well,
going to be a
here's
lot
the
more
thing.
difficult.
I mean,
Is that
human beings act on what they believe to be true.
okay?
100%. Right? If you believe you're a giraffe, you're going to act like a giraffe. If you believe you are an athlete, you're going to do the things that an athlete does. If you believe, and that's why your beliefs are so important, right? Your mindset. We always talk about mindset. It's,
Sure.
to me, it's mindset is really the process of taking beliefs that don't serve and replacing them with ones that do. Right? You can do that through brainwashing by just constantly using affirmations and visualization and things to really sort of rewire your brain. But at the core
Yeah.
root of it, that's what we want, right? Like, because if you believe to be somebody who is deserving of success, what are the actions you're going to take as a result of that? Right?
Right. You're going
You're
to
going to
take
act like,
action, act like you're already a success, or have success, or you're on your way to success. If you constantly believe that and see that and vision it and all that. Yeah.
you're going to act like, right? If you
Yeah.
believe you're an athlete, how are you going to act versus if you don't believe you're an athlete, right? Like, the beliefs are what really drive the change,
Yeah.
because action is hard. Like, taking action against something you're so used to doing it's hard. It's hard to make change in your life. And that's because your actions have been rooted with who you believe to be.
Mhm.
So if you want something new in your life, you have to replace the beliefs with new ones. And that starts the journey then, because if you believe you're somebody who takes massive action, guess what? You're going to create a lifestyle and an environment and put yourself in containers and meet other people and attract all of the speed that comes with believing that thing about yourself.
Yeah. So how do you put yourself in that mindset? Is that through, like you said, um, through mantras, through,
Well,
uh,
there's a few. I mean, so I'm a big fan of kind of taking a two-pronged approach. In the beginning, what I did was constantly just sort of listen and surround myself with people that thought that way.
that's a
Right.
great,
Like, I wanted
yeah,
to be around, and I wanted to kind of brainwash my subconscious into just seeing subliminal examples of all these people doing this. So, like, I remember when I first started, because I used to be an like or employee who turned entrepreneur.
sure.
So that was the first identity shift I actually had to make, which was, I'm not an employee, I'm an entrepreneur. And so I used to have these Steve Jobs quotes in my bathroom. I used to have like affirmations that talked about what kind of an entrepreneur I wanted to be and
Sweet.
what described the traits of an entrepreneur. And so, like, entrepreneurs are not afraid of failure. Entrepreneurs are committed. Entrepreneurs have a strong why. Entrepreneurs, I just had these affirmations where I just read every morning, and I was like, oh, that's an entrepreneur. I can be that now. Even if I don't have all the things that a quote unquote successful entrepreneur has, I can be committed. I can be decisive, right? I can be confident. I can move in a way that's like, I can act like an entrepreneur. I can think like an entrepreneur. I can be an entrepreneur without having the things an entrepreneur has. You do that long enough, eventually you'll act in a way that actualizes the things that an entrepreneur has. It's just like the
It's weird
world
how that
catches up to
works,
you.
right?
The world catches up to you. Like, the world will always catch up to you,
Yeah.
because like attracts like your reticular activating system, your RAS. I mean, if you bought a red car and all of a sudden you go out there, you're going to see tons of red cars. Like,
Right.
it's the same thing. Like, when you change what you're looking at, when you change what you're looking for, when you change what you're craving, you naturally start to notice all of the things that already exist in your world. And then you just start acting in a way that connects all those dots. And then that creates the abundance and and the momentum train,
I
right?
love
You
it.
just start collecting things onto the train, and then the train just keeps moving, and that's it. And then, but that takes time. Like most people don't tough it out long enough to internalize that momentum train, which is why the first part is that subconscious, like really kind of brainwashing and really doing that. The second part is anytime you get into momentum, build an environment that feeds the momentum, right? Like accountability structures, use your calendar, make promises, throw out junk food, like whatever those little changes you can do in your environment to strengthen the practices you're already doing of building your mindset. Like it has to be both. Because if you do one without the other, you're just putting a Band-Aid on a broken arm that eventually will have to go to a more severe solution. But in that space, you don't have the mindset built to believe in long-term solutions. So you end up giving up. And then most people fall short, and then they blame the system, or they go into the victim mindset. And then it's hard to get out of that. It's
Yeah.
really, really, really hard to get out of that victim mindset, especially when you believe you did everything you had to do to be successful and you didn't get it. And it's hard. So
I like that. Thank you.
anyways,
That
went on
was
a
great.
tangent. Apologies.
No, that was awesome, man. I'm listening. It was beautiful. Can you hear my kid screaming in the background, by the way?
Yeah, I can.
Sorry.
No worries, dude. No worries.
I texted because this is, if you can see behind me, like I put
Yeah,
that up as like a sound barrier in my
dude,
office, and then I
don't
have
even worry
like
about it, man.
a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old.
I've had plenty of yeah, no, it makes for better episodes, to be honest, I think.
So, like, especially when they're not just going blah, they're like,
Yeah.
like
Don't even worry about it, man. Been there, done that.
It's funny. So talking about mindset and beliefs in that, like with that situation, in the mornings or whenever, actually, my kids screaming, right? You don't have kids yet, right?
No, not yet.
Yeah. So I have these journal entries that I do every morning, very similar to yourself, that just talks about gratitude. And sometimes I'll do them in the middle of the day too, just to readjust. And if my kid's screaming or something, I'll write, I'm grateful that my son is healthy enough to be able to have a voice where he can scream and project it, right? Instead of, I want to just strangle my kid right now. He's being so annoying. He's so loud, So I try to shift my perspective and my mindset and believe in that situation. And that's kind of exactly similar to what you're saying, right?
I mean, mindfulness is most people, like, to me, that's active meditation, right? Like, to me, meditation is nothing but something that takes you from your head and back into your heart or your body or your present moment. That doesn't have to be done sitting quietly on a mountain or, putting yourself in a perfect space. Actually, to me, practicing mindfulness inside of chaos is the true sort of spiritual journey we're all on. When everything is hitting the fan, when things are going out of control, when my routines are out the door, how can I come back to remembering that power that I've always had inside of me, that safe space, that calmness, right? The haven from the chaos, if you would, to remember the power and the sense of self and being. And I think that is the ultimate spiritual journey. If you really think about, like, thinking about being mindful is about coming back to something, that infinite source of knowing in your heart, in your body, and not letting your mind project thoughts of the future or thoughts of the past. And because that's really where all fear lives. To me, fear is a constant sort of in the future about things that haven't happened yet, or in the past, and like just projecting all of past beliefs into future moments. So if you can create a moment where, even when your kids, like, let's say your kids get older and you're working on some stuff and they run into the room, and that's a beautiful moment and opportunity to just take a deep breath and just get back to what's really important in your life, which is, you're probably working for your kids anyways, right? Like, that's what you're really building all this for. So
100%. That's what makes my heart sing.
That's the thing. It brings you back. Like, when you really come back to the body, and you come back to that, like, kind of space of just, like, there's always clarity when you're not in your mind.
Yeah.
Like, it's really easy to make decisions. That goes back to what I was talking about, intuition and kind of getting better at that. But it is that practice of just kind of coming back to your heart and trusting whatever you find there.
And those pauses, I love that you brought that up, because those pauses, those subtle little 3 times throughout the day or during certain moments are so beneficial and helpful
Yeah.
to our body and mind and our stress level, right,
Oh
throughout the
yeah.
day. Because you talked about the kid running in, that's where and we've seen it on movies so many times, right, where the father turns around, Jesus, I'm working over here, leave me alone, what the heck's the matter with you, da, 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 da. Instead of, if you take that breath, you realize, okay, I don't need to react that way right now. How about a quick hug? And how about a, hey honey, I'm just doing a little something right now, I would love to play with you in a little bit, or something, just that type of response instead. That's something I try to practice all the time. I'm so glad you brought that up for people to hear. And that's can be done in all different situations, whether you have kids or not, at work, whether you have a full-time job, anything that could be done. And I love that you brought that up. So thank you.
You're so welcome,
Is
man.
this the kind of stuff that you talk about? Because I know you have 3 keynotes. One of your keynotes is, well, first off, so everybody knows, the keynotes that Raj specializes in is side hustle into an impactful 7-figure movement, growing your business exponentially through impact-driven commerce, and the art of experience an extraordinary life. And I think, Raj, if I'm not mistaken, we've talked about the latter of those 3 for the most part so far, right? How you, the experience of an extraordinary life, how you get that.
Yeah. I mean,
Uh,
I
yeah,
think for me, that's the stay grounded talk in a way,
yeah,
right? Coming back to reminding yourself of the infinite wisdom you've always had and trusting that and building practices in your life that align with you. Just, man, everybody knows what's right for them. Everybody knows, like, we've just been put in societies from school from a very young age. We've just been put in societies from a very young age being like, oh, I want to do this. No, do this. Oh, I want to be this. No, do this. Like, we've been trained to not trust ourselves. Like, the system is built for that. And I think as we get older, the real journey in life just comes from unlayering all of that BS, all the crap that we've just accumulated from our parents, from our societies, from our teachers, from our friends, from their
yeah,
insecurities, from systems that were built back in the 60s. And like, it's literally coming into this and then just unlayering it all and coming back to what's truly true for you, which is who you are in every moment. You have absolute control over who you want to be in every moment. You can choose to be the best version of yourself, right? And that usually comes back down to just dropping into your heart
yeah,
and reminding yourself of what that feels like. Like, what does it feel like to be my best? Maybe it is being really loving when your daughter comes into your room and,
yeah,
asks for time. Like, maybe that is you being your best. Maybe it is you doing scary stuff, like getting on stages and starting businesses and doing stuff that's massively terrifying. Like, maybe that is you being your best. But I think that's the journey. And I think if you constantly live with that in your mind and that in your heart, and you align those two, you're going to live an extraordinary life no matter what the hell you do. Doesn't matter if you start a business, doesn't matter if you're a career oriented person that's just, it doesn't matter if you're into health and fitness, doesn't matter if you're an artist, as long as you're aligning with your heart and your brain, I don't think you can go wrong. Like,
yeah.
you'll live your life for you. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things you could ask for, that you just lived a life that was as true as possible to the one you always knew was there for you.
Always knew was there. And I think there's a key there, is to finding your truest self. Because for me, I was the, my wife even told me this. I think it was 3 or 4 years ago. She goes, you're like the asshole of the group, right? You know that, like, you're the ball buster. You're the, not much of a filter person of your friends group. Like, that's who I'm like, well, I guess that's me. I guess that's the way that I am. And slow, as the months and years went by and I had kids and got older and I went through some Tony Robbins stuff, and I'm like, dang, that's not who I want to be. And I don't think
Yeah.
that's really who I am. But I thought all along that that's just me. That's the way I am. That's the way I'm going to operate. And I think a lot of people probably also feel that way. And need that awakening moment, or need to realize that you don't have to be that person. There's probably something else inside of you that you're missing, that you need to look for, that you need to find. And how in your experience, how do we find that? How is there an awakening moment, or over time, how do we figure out who we really are?
These are great questions, man. So one thing I've realized, you have your true self and then you have a borrowed self. A borrowed self is like, you know, we saw our parents act a certain way, therefore those are traits that we want to embody because we believed our parents to be the greatest people of all time and flawless and had all their stuff figured out, even though they absolutely did not. Like
Yeah.
we have these things, right? Like so we have borrowed traits that we've taken along the way and then sort of created this persona or this identity that makes our mind feel like it's safe to be in public with, right? Like I saw this growing up. This is how everybody is. These are traits that make people popular or loved or accepted. And so I'm going to create a persona that's me there so that I can be accepted, right? Then there's this true self that is always, to me, rooted in a state of love and kindness, right? I think this is a true belief for me. I
I
do believe
love
that
that you said that.
everybody I think everybody's got the best intentions. And if they knew better, they would do better, right? Most people just don't know better. They don't know the separation between who they are here and what's coming up for them. Like they just
Yeah.
don't know. And
Yeah.
so like that sense, like that true self to me is uncovered by you switching the lens to focusing on things that resonate with you. Right? Like when you say the word resonate, that literally comes from the word resonance, which is a form of frequency.
Oh,
Right?
okay.
So love is one of the highest frequencies on the planet. Like when you feel a state of love, you are legitimately just brightening up. Or
I
like when
understand that. Yeah.
somebody walks in with a massive amount of love or compassion or joy, it usually makes the entire room more loving, compassionate, and joyful, right? Like you can tell
Yeah.
there's just some people that just walk into a room and they're just like, it's just so great, right?
Yeah.
That's because that is the highest frequency. So like
Right.
to me, like when you find things that resonate with you, that make you feel that to me is an opportunity for you to listen.
Ah.
That's an opportunity for you to say, oh man, why is this person resonating with me? Right? Like if you went and saw a speech or you watched a video online, you saw this guy just talking into the screen, and for some reason you're like, man, this guy's really hitting a tune with me. Or you read a book and you're reading a chapter and you're like, damn, this guy's story or like what he said and how he said it just resonates with me. That's an opportunity for you to go and learn more about them, right? Like, what do you love about them? What are qualities that are so like that you admire about them? Because likely what that means is those are things you see in yourself too, right? Those are qualities that you admire and you see maybe in a future version of yourself, an aspirational version, right? And like that gives you clues. And then over time, when you start to pay attention to those things that resonate, you start to just build that sort of identity that isn't really based on anything other than something that you feel.
Right.
And that's the truth. Like when you feel something,
That's interesting.
that's that resonance. And I think that's the practice. Like we've all felt it, man. Like, I mean, I've got idols. Like I remember one of my first idols was, before I even became successful, was Kobe Bryant. And I used to be a
Not a bad
massive
person to be an idol, to have as
like,
an
I mean,
idol.
yeah, like, I mean, and I went down in why, and I was like, God, this guy's so just relentless. Like he doesn't stop. He just wants to be the best. And then I went back and I looked at myself and then I looked at my entire life and I was like, wow. So there were things I did in my life that were rooted in a core essence of mine. But then I also found other things, right? Like, cause the same way you can see the things you admire in other people, you can also find the things you don't, right? Like you can find
Okay.
patterns in things, but if they don't resonate, you can choose to let them go.
Mm.
Right? Like just because you adopted something from your parents doesn't mean they have to be something that you carry with you for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And
I
I
love
think
what you
that's
said. Oh, sorry.
go ahead. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
This is beautiful. Right. And everybody listening right now, this is free podcast. I mean, Raj he's giving you some goods here. I've had a lot of moments where I just want to stop and say something, but I'm not stop him, but like write things down, which I'm going to re-listen to this whole thing. But one thing you said that I've never heard before are borrowed traits. I think you used the word traits, but borrowed was that important word. And I've never heard anybody put it that way. And it made me instantly click. Like for years of my life, being a follower and trying to do what was cool and what I thought like I needed to do as a man and prove myself and all this stuff, borrowed stuff that I thought was just borrowed crap that I did to myself that I thought I needed to do, until I broke that open and realized what actually made me feel good, right? Feel loved. And I love that's the highest frequency. And you can, that like when I love that you said that, because when you're in a room with a group of people, who is the most loving and the most kind, truly loving and kind person, because you could feel it. You can feel their energy. You can see it in them, and everybody, that they want that. They want to be around that person. They can feel it in the room. And I'm so cool that you said that.
It's interesting. You mentioned, the idea of being a man. That's a borrowed, like the idea of what a man is in society is a borrowed sort of avatar, right? Like
Yeah.
powerful, hungry, wealthy. But on the other side of that, also, like if I think about like traditional parents and most men in previous societies, it was like, give up being a good family man in the pursuit of wealth and power. Give up a sense of self and who you are and identity and purpose in pursuit for social acceptance. Don't show your emotions. There's so many traits that we've adopted that the traditional man has been sort of built around, that has been based in years of, again, societal conditioning. Like when you go back to the Spartans, what was a man? A man was this, right?
Yeah.
And so like I think that there's just a lot of archetypal sort of creations of men, and same thing for women, right? Like now there's like we're doing this really amazing dance right now where like men are starting to adopt the really amazing, powerful feminine energy, and like all people are born with both. When I say energy and feminine and masculine energy, I'm just going to say a quick thing for anybody who doesn't understand what I'm saying. Like, I think everybody is born with both a yin and a yang, right? I think the yin is like the feminine energy, which is like the flow of water, and it's just like creation. But then you have yang, which I think it's yin and yang. Don't quote me on that, but it's one of the two.
Yeah.
Yang on the opposite is like structure, discipline, like keeping the boundaries. It's like a river flowing, right? So to me, we're finally getting to this point where women are starting to acknowledge the masculine energy in them, which is like structure, goals, creation, career.
Yeah.
And then men are starting to find that opposite, which is like more vulnerability and expression and, being like really kind of crying in public, having that softer side. And it's come to a really beautiful place. I think that's the beauty of information, right? The more we know about different kinds of people on this planet, the more our own identities and ideas around what's possible for ourselves become clear, because now we can start to find what truly resonates, as opposed to just adopting the only male figure in our lives, the only female figures in our lives, which are usually our parents, to set the standard for what's real.
Right.
Like we don't need that anymore. Like I can go online, listen to this podcast. Somebody might've been listening to this, heard about me. Like, who the hell is Raj? All of a sudden they can go learn about me and find out all the qualities that I've been doing and find resonance with me. Someone can do the same with you, right? Like it's just, that's where we live now. And it's amazing. It's phenomenal. And it's fully ours for the taking.
And yeah, and that's, without it, I wouldn't be on this journey. And I don't know if, personally, I don't know if that's your case, but without social media, without the internet and stuff, I wouldn't have known about getting into a new transformation, I guess. And I don't know if you're that same way, but and now you mentioned mentor earlier. I wanted to ask this earlier. Do you have like, have you paid for, and I asked this question selfishly, have you paid for mentors and have you paid for coaches in your life?
My biggest line item on my balance sheet is education. So I budget about 100 grand a year for masterminds, coaches, retreats, experiences, and things that force me to sort of dig deep and really turn myself into the best version of myself. It's like my North Star. So yes, I invest a lot, constantly listening to podcasts. I think this comes back to resonance. Like it depends on what you want to learn, right? Like in the beginning, I was really invested in learning business. Like that was my big kind of thing. Like I wanted to learn marketing. Actually, marketing was my thing I wanted to learn because I wasn't a marketer. I was an engineer by background. So, I paid for I bought every single course on marketing. I paid for every single book on marketing. I went to marketing conferences when I got a good hang of that, then I, realized that, I actually didn't know anything about myself. So then I invested in self-awareness.
Mm.
So practices, people that help me become more aware of my fears, right? Like people that help me become more aware of my relationships with money and my relationships in general.
What
And
was your relationship with money?
so very fear-based. I adopted a lot of beliefs from my parents around having money in the bank. And if I didn't have money in the bank, then I was not wealthy. And now I realize that's just complete shit, because some of the wealthiest people I know have money in assets that are cash flowing, and they're just taking that cash and reinvesting it because they don't want to pay taxes. And so I'm realizing this, like, you not having money in the bank does not mean you're not wealthy. It just means you're smart,
Yeah,
or
interesting.
you're deploying your capital wisely. You're not letting large piles of money just build interest at, a couple percentage points. You're doing more with it. So, I didn't realize that. I remember when I first started the company, I was in a massively cash heavy industry, physical products, and we had to make very large purchase orders, and I'd see a lot of money going in and out of my bank account, and that made me feel really insecure. Sometimes we would
Interesting.
make investments in January that would only pay off in December. And so I'd see all this cash going out, not see it come back in until 11 months later, even though it was highly profitable. It scared the hell out of me because I was an employee and I was used to seeing a steady paycheck come into my bank account every 2 weeks.
Hmm.
So I think I started paying attention to I didn't want to be in pain. I think that was really for me. I realized I had a lot of fears and insecurities in my life, and I realized a lot of them. I didn't realize, and one of the biggest, I think, aha moments for me early on in the journey was becoming aware that these fears and insecurities that you feel around anything, like if you feel insecure about being in a public room because everyone else is smarter than you, that's not yours. That's a borrowed belief. That's something you borrowed or learned from someone else that was close to you in your life, or something you saw on TV, or something you picked up. And you thought that's how we need to operate in this world in order to thrive. I am here to tell you, if you are listening to this podcast and you are this far in, that means something we're saying is resonating to you. If you are this far into this podcast already, I am here to tell you that just because it's something that you were quote unquote born with, or it's something that you have had or you remember having for your entire life, it is not yours if you don't want it to be. Like, you get to choose what kind of person you want to be. I think the how is what stops people from really sort of believing that. But even more than that, I think most people don't actually want to change, because if they become aware that they can change, now they're responsible for changing.
Now they're responsible for changing.
And that to me is most people would rather stay stuck in the matrix than take the pill.
Yeah.
Because it's easier to be stuck in the matrix and be naive about your insecurities and your problems, and to believe that you were just born this way. But the truth is, you weren't born this way. You were born actually pretty damn brilliant. You were born to shine and then you just learned all this stuff. And if you don't want that, you can start asking yourself questions around, you can take responsibility. The first step is just taking ownership that, wow, these beliefs created all this pain and suffering in my life. I want something different, so I'm going to learn from someone new, or I'm going to find somebody who has got exactly what I want, and I'm going to go do that instead. And I'm going to stop taking advice from my parents or my friends or my societies or my uncles or my aunts or my tennis coach or whatever. I'm going to stop taking advice from people that were just born in my life, and I'm going to start looking for people that seem to have it all, that seem to have more than I do. And I'm going to pay them, or I'm going to pay attention to them, or I'm going to consume their content. I'm going to read their books so that I can potentially create a life that's different from what I've always had in the first place.
Beautiful. Thank you, Raj. That was good. And also, one thing to add to that, reach out to that person, because all they can do is either ignore you or say no or actually respond. So if there's somebody that you're consuming their content, you have a questions, reach out. I mean, Raj, I'm assuming that you love when people ask you questions, right?
Oh, I
And
love
you,
it, man.
yeah,
Yeah. Just reach out to me on anything. I'm on
yeah,
social, most active on Instagram.
yeah.
You can send me an email. You can contact me on my site. I mean, yeah, I love questions. I love hearing from people. I mean, really, it's a
What's
joy.
you have a lot of stuff. You have your businesses, you have your Stay Grounded podcast, which I didn't get to ask you too much about. Unfortunately, you have
Yeah.
public speaking. What is the, out of curiosity, what's your main source of, first, let me ask, it's just interesting. I've never even asked this. What's your main source of income out of all those things you have going on right now?
My businesses. So
Your
I'm
businesses.
first and foremost a CEO.
Okay.
So I'm a fractional CEO. That's the best way I can put it. So like I own multiple companies. So I have stake in multiple companies,
Okay.
and I have a team of about 30 to 40 people
Nice.
that I just, so I manage across multiple entities. The media side, which is Stay Grounded, is our way of building a lifestyle around this beautiful message that I personally prescribe to, and the philosophy that I personally prescribe to in life, which is really taking ownership to create the most extraordinary, beautiful life you want, and having the courage to have the conversation, face the fears, and build the relationships to do so. And so the media company creates content. So I told you, Stay Grounded started as a tagline for my coffee company.
Yeah.
It wasn't the other way around.
It's cool.
So the company, we create content around staying grounded, right? Like we push all of our podcasts out to our audiences, create films around what it means to stay grounded and beyond.
Sweet.
And so we do that across multiple entities, and I invest in companies as well. And then the media side, like I said, Stay Grounded now, it's a community. We're building courses and further education for individuals that want to sort of have a more hands-on guided approach to building better, more self-awareness, finding these beliefs, changing your own relationship with yourself, going through that. So that's kind of how everything is split up. To me, Stay Grounded is kind of just the way that people find out about me and what we do.
Yeah. Then how do you manage your time with all that?
I'm very good at delegating. A
couple tricks or tips that delegating is a big one.
So the best belief change, or the best trick that I was ever told was, if you got an A on a test, would you be happy?
Sure.
Would you care if it was a 90 or 100?
No. I mean, I'm just looking back at my tests. I didn't care as long as I got an A.
So a 90 is still an A. Why the hell is everybody shooting for 100 at everything?
Right.
Right. So if you start to take that belief, as long as someone can do 90% of what you can do, it's still an A. Get out of the way.
Yeah.
You don't need to hang on. I think the biggest thing that stops people from delegating like rapidly is the belief that, again, it's the superhero syndrome. Really, like we want to be everything in our business. And it's all because of beliefs that we've carried along the way, that our self-worth is based on how much we do. And the harder we work, the more worthy we are. The more we're needed, the more worthy we are. And if we're not needed in our business, are we really worthy? So we create these traps that keep us stuck inside of our businesses instead of just delegating as fast as possible so you can start new businesses. Right? Like
interesting.
So like to me, delegating has been big. I have a weekly process with my assistant where, I'll take note of every single thing I do every single day, from answering emails to being on a podcast like this, to taking out the trash, to buying groceries, whatever. Right. And then at the end of the week, I'll divide it into 4 categories, which is incompetent, competent, excellent, and unique. And you start to do that over time, you start realizing how much time you spend doing shit that you're not good at, which is incompetent, and then stuff that anybody else can do, which is competent. And so I start outsourcing that stuff, right? So whether it's hiring TaskRabbits to come and do grocery shopping, or cutting up vegetables, or taking out the trash. Like we have a video shoot tomorrow for my coffee company, and we just hired somebody to go out there, and I think it's like $30 an hour to go and buy a bunch of costumes and props and stuff. And so I don't have to do it. I'm on the podcast with you instead.
Yeah.
And so I think it comes back down to really sort of equating that value, right? Because incompetent and competent tasks usually cost you more to do by yourself than it does to hire other people. And the stuff that you are excellent at or unique at, no one else can do. So like most entrepreneurs starting businesses are either really good at creating products or selling them, or creating content or selling it or distributing it, right? So if you stay in your zone of genius and then you hire people to do all the other stuff at a fraction of the cost, you just build this massive amount of leverage
Mm.
where you're doing stuff that you can do faster than anyone else can do, which means you're doing more of it, which means it makes you more money faster. And then that feeds the ability for you to build on more team and delegate more. And then eventually you start to even delegate the stuff that you're excellent at by hiring CEOs and COOs and managers and VPs. And then you just work yourself out of a job. But ultimately, you've got the coolest job in the world, which is doing exactly what you were born to do, with people you want to do it with, and at a scale that really creates an impact and leaves a legacy that you'd be proud of later on.
Yeah. And this doesn't happen overnight, guys. This is like a process.
No, this is 4 years. Guys,
yeah.
This is when I first started. The first way I started was, I hired a VA from the Philippines to just answer our emails, to collect data, $5 to $10 an hour tasks.
Yeah.
Like you start there, but you get into the habit of delegating, right? Just get into the habit of getting at least one thing off your plate a week. If you want to get ambitious, start with one thing a day, just one. It doesn't have to be a big thing. Just pay attention to your life. Like, where are you spending your time?
Yeah.
And then go look at, like, let's say it is groceries. Let's say you're spending 2 hours a day getting groceries or whatever, right? Or 2 hours a week getting groceries. Like, think about all that time. Maybe it's meal prep. Maybe it's chopping stuff. Like, just see where you're spending your time and then equate it and go ask, like, how much would it cost for me to get all this stuff taken care of? Right. And then look at your budget and see, all right, can I actually afford that? But most people are afraid to even ask themselves the questions, can I afford that? Because they don't even realize they're doing it. So I think the first step really to become more productive is to get very aware of where you're spending your time.
Yeah.
It's to take inventory, whatever you.
Yeah. Competent, incompetent, unique, and
excellent. So it's
excellent.
Incompetent, competent, incompetent stuff that you suck at. So like for me, I suck at graphic design. Like it would actually be a pain and an awful product for me to go and learn Photoshop or Adobe because I don't even care about it.
So you didn't make that behind you. You had somebody else make that.
Absolutely not. This is my designer. This is my designer. I am as vanilla as it gets, man. Like I got like 50 V-necks with nothing on them. Like, I mean, I'm pretty black and white, dude. So like this back here was created, but I am a very good writer, right? So like my creative expression comes from like writing. I'll write massive amounts of stuff, right? So, but it doesn't come from design. So that's an incompetent. A competent one might be, I don't know, scheduling people for my podcast, right? Like that might be something that I can do, but I can also either find a tool that can do it for me, or I can find my assistant to do it for me. If I give her the scripts, what to say, how to say it, a process. If I create a process around it, someone else can do it. Excellent.
Can you send me that process after this, please?
Sure. Yeah. It's actually now automated to the point where like I just send people a link. Let's say I meet somebody amazing and I really want them on the show. I'll send them a link.
Yeah.
They pick the time they want. From there, that sends them an automated form to get their bio, their video assets, the things they want to talk about, what's important to them, all the information I need. And then it sends an automated follow-up with like tech stuff. And, it's just, it's automated. But that's the thing. Like when you pay attention, right, you start to see like, wow, I just spent an hour scheduling the show. Like, why the hell am I doing that?
Yeah.
What if I spent an hour figuring out how to not spend hours? Right? That to me is leveraged time, and that's a very good use of your time.
It's awesome. That's awesome.
Right? So it's just about asking better questions, man. Becoming aware and asking questions, and becoming aware of what's possible by following individuals like myself or Tim Ferriss or anybody out there who's really big in the productivity. Like Tim Ferriss changed my life. His book, The 4-Hour Workweek, legitimately changed my life. And so
crazy.
I just think it's just finding those knowledge pieces.
Well, that's I'm going to definitely re-listen to this, by the way. This was good. This was a lot of good stuff. And hopefully everybody listening is taking notes, or go ahead and go back and check the show notes. But the last thing I want to wrap this up with, Raj, is a question that, again, I tend to ask most of my guests and it's a pretty question you've heard of before, but I don't know if you've ever actually sat down with yourself and thought about it. So I want to put you on the spot here. What would you do if you could go back in time and tell your 18-year-old self something? And you don't, for you, it's not that far back, but, and you might not. So what was something that you might have told them if you could go back in time?
Um, you're exactly where you need to be. Everything is here to teach you a lesson, so pay attention. Um, and keep an open mind, because the things you thought you wanted so much um, may not actually get you what you really want. And so just keep an open mind.
I love that. The things that you actually think you want might not actually be what you really want in life. I like that. I like everything you just said. Love it, man. Raj, thank you so much for coming on. Thanks for spitting your wisdom. Thanks for sharing it with the Mindful Impact crowd. And I wish you a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you, my friend. Cheers.